Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
We welcome you in on Drive Time. We are live from the JMA Wireless Dome this afternoon ahead of the Orange women's basketball game this evening, taking on Colgate. Looking to get to 9-1 on the season, and we are rolling here on Drive Time from 5 to 6 p.m. We will have you covered with Orange women's basketball once that gets going at 6:45. I'll be on the call for that one, per usual, on ESPN Radio Syracuse and the Cuse app and the Varsity Network app. So Orange women's team taking on Colgate tonight, another New York in-state foe, and they are rolling right now after getting to 8-1 on the season with a big victory on the road over SMU back on Sunday. So we welcome you in here on Drive Time, remote, live from the Dome. It is ugly Christmas weather night tonight inside the Dome. Ugly Christmas sweater night. Tough thing to say in a row. So I've got my Christmas sweater. I'm ready to roll. And if you can make it out to the Dome tonight, I know it's kind of snowy conditions, and we hope everyone is driving safe, but bring it on out to the JMA Wireless Dome tonight. Of course, the men's team will be in action tomorrow night as they take on St. Joe's. First game in a little bit for the men's team, so excited to see how they look tomorrow night. And then they will be right back in action on Saturday mid-afternoon playing Hofstra after a 10-day break. They will have 2 games over the next 3 days, the Orange men's team. But the women's team inside the Dome tonight. We'll continue to preview the matchups this week for both the women's basketball team tonight, and then get into St. Joe's a little bit and Hofstra a little bit more today, and what we should be expecting from the Orange men's team as they have those 2 games on the docket this week. And we did hear from head coach Adrian Autry earlier today on Orange Nation, typically our Thursday guest on Orange Nation, but Thursday will be a game day and a late game day with a 9 p.m. tip tomorrow night as the Orange take on St. Joe. So we moved Coach Autry up to Wednesday. If you missed that conversation, we'll play back the most important part from that conversation at some point over our hour with you this afternoon, which was him talking about Donnie Freeman. And Steve and Bally tried their hardest to get some sort of concrete update out of Coach Autry on Donnie Freeman and his health status and where his timeline is. They got a little bit of information, but it's kind of the same stuff that we have been hearing about Donnie Freeman, the idea of it being a day-to-day or week-to-week injury. Based on Adrian Autry's comments on Orange Nation earlier today, I would be surprised if Donnie is playing tomorrow. I would be surprised if Donnie is playing Saturday for that matter, but we will see when he is available and when he is ready to go, and I'm sure we'll continue to be asking Coach Autry about that one. It does seem like he is coming back soon, according to Coach Autry, but we'll play back that comment at some point here over our hour with you. And phone lines are still open, as always, here on the program. We can take your phone calls remote here from the Dome, 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call here on Drive Time. That is 4ESPN 44. If you would like to give a ring. The breaking news across college sports and across the sports world right now that came out about 15 minutes ago doesn't necessarily pertain to Syracuse a whole bunch, but Sharon Moore, the head coach for Michigan after 2 seasons, has been fired with cause for violating team rules. And Pete Thamel and Adam Schefter and Dan Wetzel and all of the bigwigs are reporting this over the last 15 minutes or so. Pete Thamel, one of his latest tweets saying that head football coach Sharon Moore has been terminated with cause. Remember, we had Aaron Solomon on Orange Nation last week, and he went out of his way to sort of say that if a football coach gets fired with cause, that means something has gone terribly wrong. That does not happen for performance. So we know it is a violation of some sort. There have been no rumblings of this. Jerome Moore and Michigan are coming off a 9-3 season. They're getting ready for a bowl game against Texas. 8-5 last year. They've been a little bit down since they won the national title and lost Harbaugh to the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers now a couple seasons ago. So there was a little bit of a hot seat rumbling maybe going into next year for Jerome Moore, but no way that he would have been fired based on performance after just 2 seasons. There were no rumblings of that, and you obviously would not fire someone at this juncture. We thought this wild coaching carousel was over, and it seems like it is not over because Jerome Moore has been fired and terminated with cause. To finish up Pete Thamel's latest tweet, he said it's effective immediately. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. So that'll do it. Jerome Moore fired from Michigan. That came out about 15 minutes ago, and that leads to who the heck is Michigan going to get to coach their football team? And the answer might be that they might have to kick the can down the road and go with an interim head coach for all of next season because they are very late in the process here. Signing day has come and gone. A lot of the good coaches that we've talked about in this crazy coaching carousel cycle where there weren't a lot of big names, but there were a ton of big jobs open, those have all been filled. So there's not really an easy solution here for Michigan, especially given the timeline. I would almost be surprised if they don't just go the interim coach route because you don't want to hire someone and give them your typical 4 or 5 year contract, and then you're stuck with that coach who you don't think is a good enough coach for Michigan. And you know that Michigan is one of the biggest jobs in the sport year in and year out. So that's going to be fascinating. There's been so many weird coaching moves this year and so many big jobs open. And now Michigan, after winning the national title 3 years ago, going 8-5 in year one under Jerome Moore, 9-3 this past year, not performance related. He has been fired today with cause, effective immediately, because credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. That is through Pete Thamel, who is always a credible reporter out there and a Syracuse grad. So that will be interesting to follow over the course of the next couple weeks as far as what comes out from that and what comes out in terms of what Michigan will do with really no precedent for this and a tough situation given the timeline of when this firing is coming down. So we are live from the Dome here, Orange women's basketball tonight against Colgate. We'll preview the basketball matchups for the men's team and the women's team a little bit more as we progress with our hour show with you today. Phone lines remain open throughout the entirety of our show today. Even though we are remote, we can get you in on the phone lines at 315-437-7644. But let's begin with our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive, as always. And we want to talk a little bit more to start about the Syracuse coaching carousel and the Syracuse coaching news that has been coming out. We find out last night, lots of reports saying that Jeremy Hawkins, the defensive line coach for Georgia State, is now going to become the new defensive line coach for Syracuse. And we talked yesterday on the show about how I felt like the narrative was forming that Fran Brown was making a stylistic change in terms of his coaching strategy and who he was trying to bring into his staff. And I was saying yesterday, let's pump the brakes on that a little bit. Let's see it play out. I said that very well might be the case, but we had only seen a handful of hires to this point, and I thought it was a little early to assume that Fran was shifting away from the young recruiter type and going for the veteran coach that is known for player development. This coach and Jeremy Hawkins, the defensive line coach from Georgia State, who is reportedly coming over to the Orange, he is very much the young recruiter type. And I think Fran Brown is always going to have some of those coaches on his staff, and I think this is a good hire. I understand that a lot of you were trying to figure out the pattern and the trend and try and connect dots on why Fran Brown was hiring certain coaches and why he fired certain coaches. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. I think he's just looking for a different voice, and I think that's right, and I think that's his style, especially when you're coming off a 3-9 season. So he goes out, and it seems like Jeremy Hawkins is going to be the new defensive line coach, 39 years old, from Georgia State. And for the last 2 seasons, Hawkins has been named the Sun Belt #1 recruiter in that conference, according to 24/7 Sports. Sounds a lot like when Fran Brown was the #1 recruiter in the nation, according to 24/7 Sports, when Syracuse was able to grab him. Georgia State had a very down year. They were 1-11 last season, but that doesn't really matter or put any of that blame on an assistant coach or the defensive line coach for that matter. He seems like a rising star, and he seems like someone that had a lot of suitors in the offseason here. I think it's fair to say that on paper, I would probably rather have Elijah Robinson, and some of you might contest that, but I do think Elijah Robinson, who seems like he might be on his way to Nebraska after it seemed like he might be on his way to LSU, has a better overall pedigree or track record, that word we've been using so much throughout this week. But as I said yesterday, the biggest thing that comes from these coaching staff moves and the biggest thing to take away from the offseason is just how well does Syracuse do at bringing in new talent, and specifically in the trenches. So this was an important hire. They've already gone out and secured their offensive line coach, according to reports that it's Juan Castillo, who was last at Michigan, actually, as an offensive analyst. Before that, he was at UCLA and was a longtime NFL offensive line coach, spent several years with the Eagles and a couple other NFL franchises as well. So that was kind of the veteran style of coach. Now they have more of the younger, up-and-coming, great recruiter from Georgia State here, the 39-year-old Jeremy Hawkins, which seems like a good hire. The tie back to how Fran knew him, we don't know this for certain, but it seems like this could be the connection, that the Georgia State current head coach, Dell McGee, was an assistant with Fran Brown at Georgia. So he clearly had someone that could vouch for Jeremy Hawkins and someone that could speak to what Fran Brown would be getting if he did hire him. This seems like more of a Fran Brown hire than a Vince Karras hire, who is the new defensive coordinator coming over from Toledo for the Orange. So as I said yesterday, I'll keep saying it. I think the biggest thing Syracuse needs to do in the offseason to quote-unquote win the offseason is improve greatly in the portal the talent they have at their disposal at offensive line and defensive line. Now, they do have some young pieces on the offensive line that are returning, that are exciting pieces for the future, but I still would like to see veteran players be added to the offensive line. I think offensive line is the type of position that you need guys that are seniors, grad students, juniors, upperclassmen to feel good about that unit when you're going into a new season. And they could benefit from adding some of those to round out the offensive line, maybe around a young up-and-coming Byron Washington, who could be a starter as early as next year, full-time starter. We even saw him start plenty of games as a freshman this year, and we know Fran Brown is high on him. And I'm high on Byron Washington too, but I do think you need some veteran pieces for the offensive line. The defensive line group is losing pretty much everyone, and we found out Chase Simmons is hitting the portal yesterday. Derek McDonald hit the portal as well. Those are the two most notable names from a Syracuse football perspective to go into the transfer portal at this point. I do think if we are going to feel good about Syracuse football next season, in year 3 under Fran Brown, we have to feel good about what they have at offensive line and defensive line. Going into this year, I thought those were okay units. As the season played out, they were more like the 8th or 9th best unit on the team out of the 10 position groups. They were in the back half of the team, inside the trenches. You cannot be a good football team in power conference college football if you have 2 of your weaker units in the trenches. We saw that under Dino Babers. We saw that has been the Achilles heel for a while for Syracuse. And Fran Brown has done a really good job of bringing in bigger guys. But now it's a matter of getting those guys ready, getting those guys developed, and also bringing in some veteran pieces so that they can develop at an appropriate pace. And they're not forced into starting ahead of when they should be starting. Because, again, offensive line specifically, and even defensive line for that matter, It's all about how much weight you're putting on in the weight room. It's about getting on that college schedule and improving. And I really feel that if I was allocating resources in the best way possible for Syracuse this offseason, I would understand that backup quarterback is a need, but I would say the top two needs are offensive line and defensive line. And in order for us to feel good about Syracuse football next year, those need to go from weaknesses on this year's roster to viewed as strengths in terms of position groups on the roster going into next season. I would like us to sit here in the preseason, going into year 3, and rank the position groups based on 1 to 10, and us feel that offensive line and defensive line are at least inside the top 5. Both of them. That would require getting a lot of players in the transfer portal to bring in at those position groups. But I think Fran is really focused on that, and it seems like maybe the biggest news to come out of Jeremy Hawkins is that Georgia State has some guys that have hit the portal that could be starters for Syracuse in the defensive line group. Linebacker will be important as well, but they really just need to add some veteran pieces in the trenches. That's the biggest thing for me. So we're off and running here on Drive Time, live from the Dome after our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. The Orange women's basketball team is warming up right in front of me right now as they get ready to take on Colgate tonight. We'll have the call for that game, 6:45 pregame ahead of the 7 p.m. tip this evening against Colgate. Orange men's basketball inside the Dome tomorrow night for a 9 p.m. tip against St. Joe's, and then Saturday mid-afternoon against Hofstra. We'll preview those games a little bit more and get you the comments from Adrian Autry that he made earlier today with an update on Syracuse star Donnie Freeman. That is ahead on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio. All right, what is up, chat? Yeah, it does look that way, Dom, that he slept with a staff member. He's married of 10 years, too, so that's not ideal. I don't think the Fran and Michigan talk is going to happen. Like I said, they'll go interim coach probably. They're in a very tough spot. Harbaugh back to Michigan. They got a big win last night. Or was that? That was 2 nights ago. Can't even keep track of days. My ugly Christmas sweater is a little bit of auto. Just a classic Syracuse Christmas sweater.
Buddy. Hi. How you doing? Happy game day.
I think, I don't know, Gavendo. I'm sure they're going to do that at some point, the Tiana number 4. Yeah, I don't know if it is truly that ugly. I would wear this out and about and feel fine about it.
Anytime I think of her, I'm just going to start texting her.
But it's the best option I got. Yeah, those rumors have been out there. I've heard that as well, San Diego Cuse, about impregnating. That seems to be what has happened here. It's all about girth. Yeah, that'd be a nice get. Toledo's center. I think Fran's got to be thinking, like, who can I add from Georgia State? Like, when he's thinking about who could be the defensive line coach, he had to be thinking, oh, if I get this guy, then a couple guys that I like from Georgia State are maybe going to come too.
That's true. I'm pretty sure.
Laughing at Gavendo's comment. Yeah, he messed up there. That's going to get you fired every time. That's even worse than the Celtics coach, the former Celtics coach. I'm Ime Udoka. I did not go to men's practice today, Gavendo, but sounds like Donnie was up and moving, according to Red. We'll get to that. Don't think he's going to play tomorrow, though. I saw that Georgia State's apparently got some good coaches, San Diego Cuse. Kyra's not doing the game with me tonight. She's going to be over at the TV side of things, doing like the stats and shadowing that. And then I think she'll be doing some of the TV games here in the final end of the season. end of the non-con or end of this year. Yeah, I think I said it on the air. I was told when Donnie was originally hurt, so what, we could go back in my calendar and find out when that was, but I was told 2 to 4 weeks is what they were thinking. So that must have been like Monday the 24th was the Houston game. So it's been a little over 2 weeks since that. We're in the 2 to 4 week range now. Yeah, it seemed like he's going to be back. I saw that Michigan's already put him as the interim. Yeah, he got hurt before Monmouth Gavendo. They played him, and then I think he got hurt again or aggravated the injury that'd be my guess, during the Monmouth game. So then they were like, all right, let's check this out more and let's rest you. I know he doesn't need a surgery or anything. I mean, he's going to be back. They've gone out of their way to establish, this is not a season-ending injury. Yeah, I would agree with that, Philly. I don't see why you would play him Saturday if you're not playing him tomorrow, and it doesn't seem like he's playing tomorrow. Can someone get their 2-year degree from a community college and try to get into Noonhouse? I guess. Why not? It's like transferring in from any other school, I would think. That's kind of above my pay grade, but I would assume, Dom. That's a good question. They played 7 games all of last year, maybe, and then 1 this year, Monmouth, and that didn't even really count much, because Donnie was clearly banged up at the end of that.
Once you go on the main road, yeah, the side roads.
That'd be nice. Get him a little bit of run before Clemson.
Where are you from?
I don't know. It's something like that. Good, I could look it up. We roll along with Drive Time. We are back inside the JMA Wireless Dome this evening. Orange women's basketball in action tonight. They're taking on Colgate out of the Patriot League, picked to finish 6th in that conference. And Colgate enters on a good bit of a losing skid. Syracuse big favorites tonight to get to 9-1 on the season in year 4 under Coach Jack. We'll preview that matchup a little bit more as we continue here with Drive Time. But let's get into the men's games that are going on this weekend. It'll be St. Joe's tomorrow night, and we really haven't talked a lot of Orange men's basketball this week, or Orange basketball period, because of all the coaching staff news that has been coming out in regards to Syracuse football. If you missed it, the breaking news across college sports about 30 minutes ago is that Sharon Moore, the head coach at Michigan, has been fired with cause for an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. So you can draw your own conclusions there. It seems like Sharon Moore's days are done at Michigan. He is not being a Michigan man, according to those reports. And that's from Pete Thamel and Adam Schefter and all of the big dogs around college football and football at large are reporting that. So it'll be interesting to see if Michigan just goes the interim head coach route next year. They're in a bind there, given the timeline of this announcement and given that Sharon Moore has been fired effective immediately today. For Syracuse basketball, as you can hear, they're practicing the shot clock around me. Maybe some of you can't even hear that, but that's what I'm getting in my ears. That means we've got basketball tonight. We're going to have basketball tomorrow night inside the Dome as well. So the big question when we had Coach Autry on Orange Nation earlier today, Stephen Pauly had to ask about Donnie Freeman. And we'll play back the entire exchange here. It's about a minute where Stephen Pauly do all they can to try and get a concrete answer out of Coach Autry, and we find out a little bit of information, I would say, on the Syracuse star and what his current injury timeline is. Here's the conversation from earlier today.
say he'll be back that date, And again,
sure.
As the fans are wanting him back, I want him back too. So,
and I don't mean to pester you, but it because people are scared.
People are pestering us.
Yes, he will be back this year.
Yes, he will be back this year. Yes. That's not.
All right, good.
That's not the question. That's not the issue. That is not the issue.
Okay.
So.
All right, so there is Coach Autry from earlier today on Orange Nation talking with Stephen Pauly about the timeline for Donnie Freeman, and didn't get a ton out of Coach Autry there. I will say, I know a lot of you are fearful because we've seen that in the past when Syracuse has an injury and they call it day-to-day, then it becomes a week injury, then it becomes a month injury. My feel of the situation, and I said this when it happened, and I said this the first time we heard of Donnie Freeman and this particular injury. My feel is that it was about a month, maybe a couple weeks to a month is kind of the timeline that is my best educated guess on the situation from when it happened. So that was November 24th when we found out about this, the Monday of Thanksgiving week leading into the first game Monday night against Houston, and that was the first time that they missed Donnie Freeman. So he has not played in the last 4 games. They play Thursday tomorrow night. They play Saturday against Hofstra. They've got a couple more non-conference games after that. And as Stephen Pauly asked, which was a smart way to try and get something out of Red there, they asked about that December 31st game against Clemson. That would be a little over a month from the time of the first we heard of this injury from Donnie Freeman. So I would think that he will definitely be back for December 31st against Clemson. And Red can't say anything definitively because, as he said, he's not a doctor. But the way he answered that question, it's basically him saying something as definitively as you can get from a head coach right now, given that he is not the one that makes those decisions. And I think he is expecting, based on the way he answered that, we're speculating a little, but I think he's expecting to have him back for Clemson. I would be surprised if he plays tomorrow night. I'd be surprised if he plays Saturday. I think we're still probably looking at next week at the earliest. But Donnie Freeman is going to be back, and we shouldn't be too worried about that. Syracuse should be able to handle St. Joe's tomorrow night and then Hofstra on Saturday, just as they played pretty well without him. We've talked about how this year's team is so much deeper than previous Syracuse teams, and that is being put to the test here by losing your star player. But it is not like last year where Syracuse unfortunately didn't have their 2 stars on the court together very often and missed Donnie Freeman for basically all of ACC play and all of the second half of the season. I believe it was 14 out of the 33 games last year Donnie Freeman did play. J.J. Starling, of course, missed a good chunk of the start of ACC play as well. And we saw that last year's team just could not generate enough wins or could not stay afloat without their top 2 players. We've already seen JJ unfortunately miss more time this year, and Donnie now miss more time in the toughest stretch of the season. And for all the chatter we've spent on how will the committee evaluate Syracuse without Donnie Freeman, and will they pay attention to that? We've talked about that plenty, and I do think they will, and it's worth noting John Wildtech is on the selection committee this year. Not that he's technically allowed to be in the room when they're talking specifically about Syracuse if the Orange do end up as one of those bubble teams, which, by the way, we got a chance to talk to Joe Leonardi earlier today on Orange Nation. Joe Leonardi will be here inside the Dome tomorrow night because he is the color guy for St. Joe's men's basketball. So he will be sitting basically right where I'm sitting right now and calling the game with Matt Martucci, who is a Syracuse grad. And we got a chance to talk to both of them on Orange Nation earlier today. That conversation, as well as the conversation with Adrian Autry, is on our YouTube page right now if you want to watch that back at some point. And interesting to hear Joe Leonardi kind of jokingly say, I do think Syracuse will be in the conversation again, which, as he has always been tongue-in-cheek when talking about Syracuse, he said that is horrible for the bracketologist and himself, because we know his track record, again, back to that word, his track record of getting Syracuse right has not been great. And, of course, he has had to talk about Syracuse plenty in the last 10 to 12 years because of, unfortunately, how often they have not been definitely inside the tournament field, but more in his neck of the woods, which is around the bubble. And now we're just hoping to get back onto the bubble based on how the last couple seasons have gone. Syracuse definitely needs to take care of business tomorrow night and then against Hofstra to feel good about this team continuing to climb up the net rankings. And every game is really important when it comes to the net. I know as a fan, you feel like, okay, it's St. Joe's, it's Hofstra, why even watch those games? That's going to be 2 easy wins, which I don't know if they're quite going to be easy wins. St. Joe's right now is 176 on KenPom. Hofstra is a decent team. Hofstra beat Pittsburgh on the road by 7 points. They have had some tough losses as well, and it's not like they've been great, and I'm not trying to hype them up to the point that Syracuse is going to struggle with Hofstra on Saturday, but Hofstra is 6-4 on the season. They are 95 in the net ranking. So that is a quad 3 game. Anything in the 76 to 160 range at home is a quadrant 3 game. You want to win these games by as much as possible for the same reason that we were saying that at the start of the season. There is too much baked into the metrics right now, whether that is KenPom, Bart Torvik, or the actual net rankings or RPI or any of them. All of those metrics take into account for the most part, and definitely the net ranking takes into account how much you win by and how convincing of a win you put together. So that means all of these games really matter. When we dive in on St. Joe's, 176 on KenPom, like I said. They beat Coppin State last night. Remember, they had the head coaching change late in, I believe it was May or even after that, I think, when Steve Donahue was moved to the head coach spot after Steve Donahue took the job as an assistant in May, and then he became the head coach because Billy Lang is now at the New York Knicks as an assistant coach. So Steve Donahue, who we remember well, head coach at Cornell, then was the head coach at Boston College, had a famous upset win inside the Dome when the Orange were rolling and were, I believe, #1 in the country that year when Boston College came in and snapped their long undefeated start to the season in the 2014 year, first year of being an ACC team. That was a Steve Donahue-led BC team, if I'm not mistaken. And I know he was definitely at Cornell and then jumped to BC. I believe that timeline lines up. I seem to remember him being the head coach then. And you know what I'm mixing up that was the first year of the ACC. Regardless, Steve Donahue has had, I believe, a key upset win inside the Dome at one point. Also, Steve Donahue was the head coach at Penn recently and now is back head coaching for St. Joe's, which is right down the road from Penn. They actually lost to Penn earlier on in the season, one of those Big 5 games. They did beat Temple recently. They've been playing better basketball of late. One game for St. Joe's against power conference competition so far has come against Virginia Tech in the league, and Virginia Tech routed them 94-59. Syracuse is projected to win this game by 14 points on KenPom. The spread is 12.5 that came out today. And this is a St. Joe's team that has struggled to shoot from the outside. They're 28% from three-point range on the year. That is 343rd in the country. Amazingly, you don't see this often. They're a really bad three-point shooting team and a tremendous foul shooting team to this point in the season. They are the opposite of Syracuse in terms of free throw shooting. They are leading the country at 81% from the free throw line. Syracuse is still in the high 50% and is right near the bottom of all of Division I in free throw shooting. They do have some size, and they generate a good amount of blocks. 5.4 blocks per game is 20th in Division I for St. Joseph's. And they're a pretty good offensive rebounding team. We've run into, Syracuse has seen a lot of solid offensive rebounding teams, which is going to be a key statistic throughout the season for the Orange, is protecting the offensive glass. St. Joe's gets about 13 offensive rebounds per game. That's only 66th in Division I, but as far as they go and the caliber of team they are, that is one of their more impressive stats. They are 245 in the net, and then we will see a big tick up to Hofstra, who is 95 in the net when they come in on Saturday. We mentioned that Hofstra did beat Pittsburgh on the road. So that's kind of all you need to know about St. Joe's and Hofstra. It will be St. Joe's tomorrow night for the Orange men's team, 9 p.m. tip. And don't forget the Coach Autry show is tonight out at the Wildcat Pizza Pub. Coach Autry will not be there, though. They're going to do a special tweak to the show where it is all the assistant coaches are welcome to come out, and we will hear from all of the different Orange assistant coaches throughout the show. The reason for that is just because Coach Autry talked and recapped the Tennessee game last week, and there has not been a game since then, so tweaking it up. And you can still call in tonight on the Syracuse Sports Network through Learfield and watch that show, cuse.com/watch. Listen to it on TK99 as well. That'll be 7 to 8 p.m. Orange women's basketball tonight at 7 p.m. as well. So you'll have plenty of things to listen and consume tonight. 6:45 pregame for that one. We'll do an early pregame. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchup tonight for the women's team against Colgate. We can take your phone calls as well if you would like at 315-437-7644. Phone lines are open as we continue live from the Dome on Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Did you miss Drive Time with Tim?
John David Baker, right? Dom, I was laughing at Lane Kiffin, like, great hire, he quote tweeted. He's still saying a lot on Twitter when Ole Miss does stuff, which is kind of weird. Yeah, I have been told Fran is going to be pretty aggressive in the backup QB market. I've heard he's going to allocate a good amount of the NIL resources. We know he's trying to get 2 quarterbacks. He told us that. Really, Gavinda, that's cool, the shot clock. The show is on the road. Zach, how we doing, Zach? Catching up on the chat. Urban Meyer to Michigan, of course. Urban Meyer is, there's Jay Wright and there's Urban Meyer. They have to be brought up every single time any legitimate college basketball or college football opening happens. What about John Gruden? That's true. Lane Kiffin is a dork. Thanks for reminding me, Super Cat. Do I have to give an evil laugh after I say that too? Like Guy Rich? Minchie? Yeah, I don't think they're going to get him. He's probably the biggest quarterback portal guy right now, the Notre Dame backup. He must be pretty good if he beat out Angeli, too. Seemed like he did. Crunch game will be on, that's a good question, because it's on at the same time, right? Paul, do you have an answer to that back in the studio? I would imagine women's basketball is still on 97.7, right? Okay, thank you. Crunch is on ESPN AM. Our fine producers have alerted me. TK for Coach's Show with Coach Autry / assistants. That would be cool, Ryan. A little triple-double action. We haven't seen a triple-double since Tisha Hyman, I think. I don't know if you saw, Ryan. I tweeted something a couple hours ago that most blocks since Camila Cardoso had 9 in a game against Notre Dame in 2021. Her 8 blocks in the last game. That would be, I would love to see a triple-double with blocks. That would be sick. It's like Hannah Hidalgo with the steals. Yeah, he's not, Urban Meyer's not going to go to the rival. I think he's already got a high school recruit he wants. I think he's going 2 portal QBs. Based on what I'm hearing and what he said to us. Or said to Paulie and Steve. Blue lights. Can you guys see the auto as I lean back? lean back.
Watch your favorite ESPN
I've been
Syracuse
neglecting
sports
the
talk
YouTube
shows
chat.
on QSportsTalk.com.
We continue live from the Dome on Drive Time with Tim Leonard. Phone lines are open if you'd like to chime in. We can work in basically our final segment here live from the JMA Wireless Dome. We got Orange Women's Basketball here from the Dome tonight. Ugly Christmas sweater night. So if you are planning on coming out to the Dome, you got to rock your ugly Christmas sweater. And there are some good ones I'm seeing come out of the tunnel here as the assistant coaches are making their way out, and basically everyone is out there right now warming up for the Orange women's team as they get ready to take on Colgate tonight. Phone lines are 315-437-7644, and we can work in if you call right now if you have any thoughts to get off your chest on Syracuse football, Syracuse basketball. Sharon Moore has been fired from Michigan, effective immediately with cause for an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. So that has been breaking in the last hour, and that will add another big-time school that will be looking for a head coach and at a very late stage in the process where they might just have to kick the can down the road on that front. So we'll be monitoring that, I'm sure, over the next couple weeks. But let's preview this game tonight. The Orange are taking on Colgate. They're 8-1 on the season right now, and I love the website Bart Torvik because they track everyone in the country on the men's side and the women's side. And we've talked so much about how the Orange men's team and the women's team have a lot of similarities, and right now I would say that that has been true throughout the season, and even though the men probably have the best win because it was a ranked win over Tennessee, the Orange women have 3 Power Conference wins. They're 3-1 against Power Conference competition, 8-1 overall, and their net ranking is looking much better than the men. The men are in the 75 range at last look, and the women are 43 entering the game tonight. So they are closer to the bubble right now. Both teams still not appearing on bracketology just yet, but when you look at Bart Torvik and you look at Syracuse's upcoming schedule, they are 8-1 right now. They take on Colgate, who is 256 in the Bart Torvik rankings tonight. The Orange are 46 on the Bart Torvik rankings. So big favorites, 26-point favorites, actually, according to Bart Torvik for tonight's game. Binghamton is 250 in the rankings. Binghamton will be the opponent after this next week on Tuesday here inside the Dome. So that's another big spread, 27-point favorites according to Bart Torvik. Syracuse will be favored next Tuesday when they take on Binghamton. They're playing basically everyone in New York State, it seems like, this year. Mercyhurst is the game for school day, which we always love when all the little kids are out here for school day. That'll be a morning game next Friday, 10:30. For next Friday's school day game against Mercyhurst. So Mercyhurst, actually the Orange men are going to play as well, and that's one of the worst teams in the country on the men's or women's side. They're 351 in the Bart Torvik rankings. Basically what I'm getting at is they should be 11-1 as they host Duke in their first ACC home game, second ACC game overall. That will be December 28th against Duke, who was picked to win the league, better in the national metrics, but Duke has struggled to this point in the year against a very tough schedule, and Duke has also given them fits. Since Kara Lawson has been there and Coach Jack have been there, the Orange have always struggled seemingly against Duke, no matter the team they have. But if they could get to 11-1, that would be the exact same way they started 2 years ago when they had DeAsia Fair and they had a great team that finished in the top 3 in the ACC and made it to the NCAA tournament. That would be their best start since 2 years ago and one of their better starts in recent program history, really. If they could beat Duke, which is not a gigantic if, really. I thought it was a bigger if going into the season, and we're jumping ahead here. Hopefully the players aren't listening to me as they get locked in tonight on Colgate because they don't want to look past anyone, of course. But if they could beat Duke and get to 12-1, 2-0 in league play, they are favored to win their next 3 league games. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that if they were able to flip that Duke game, they could be sitting at 15-1. And it is very likely they will be 11-1 hosting Duke on the 28th, which will be a very important game and one that you should definitely circle on your calendar to come out to. The biggest thing with the women's team, is can they be a good enough shooting team? They are a very impressive defensive team. They mix in some zone defense, the matchup zone that Coach Jack is known for. They play a lot of player-to-player defense as well. We saw the zone really work against Auburn. We saw the player-to-player work very well in the last game at SMU. And they've got size, they've got athleticism. Uche Azoje has been incredible defensively in the last couple weeks and really all season for the Orange. She is back-to-back ACC Rookie of the Week winner and has had 20 block shots in her last 3 games combined, had 8 block shots in the road win over SMU, and somehow got 5 of those 8 block shots in the first quarter alone. That was actually the most block shots from anyone to play for Syracuse women's basketball in a game since Camila Cardoso had 9 block shots in 2021 when Uche had 8 block shots the other night against SMU down in Dallas. So very much been very exciting to see how much she impacts the game on both ends. But they actually were able to knock down some threes against SMU, and that is the big thing going forward for them. They made 11 threes. Sophie Burrows made 5 herself after making 4 in the first 8 games combined. She really broke out of her shooting slump. So those are the things we are monitoring with the women's team right now. Not that dissimilar from the men's team, but they are a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of how close they are to the bubble compared to the men. And based on where this schedule sits, it's sort of similar to the men where you could be looking at a very impressive record at one point in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then you just want to make sure as the schedule ratchets up in ACC play that you pick off enough of those tough games on the road, enough of those games in league play once you get into that routine. But it does feel like this is a team that reminds me a lot more of the team from 2 years ago, certainly than last year's team that only won 12 games. This is a very exciting team to watch, and if you have not come out to a game in person, I would encourage you to do so. They are playing Colgate tonight, 7 p.m., and we will have the call for that one, 6:45 for Orange pregame. So I have to go actually interview Coach Jack for that pregame radio show, Orange pregame, and I will be back with you guys here on the radio side of things at 6:45 for pregame of that one tonight. You can sync up your game with the TV broadcast as well. Don't forget, you can do that for all of our games. You can go to syncmygame.com if you have more questions on that. If you want to get our local home call for Orange men's basketball, for football, for women's basketball, for any of the games, you can sync it up on the Cuse app, the Varsity Network app, to the stream, and that's always a fun way to consume the game as well. That's how I consume all of the Syracuse games, and I would encourage you to do that as well. It'll be an ACC Network extra game tonight, so on the ESPN app as they take on Colgate at 7 p.m. Gio will have you for the final segment and do whatever the heck Gio wants to talk about for the final segment. We'll leave it open-ended and see what he surprises you with on the other side. But I will be back tomorrow for Drive Time back inside the studios from 5 to 6 p.m. So until then, thanks to all of you for listening, and Gio will take you the rest of the way on KeySportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio. All right, adios,
Be sure
chat.
to tune into Mike Bristol's.
Hello, everyone. How we doing? No, I'm the new Gio. There's a little, yeah. There's a little change. It's been a minute. We haven't had a pre or post game. You know, I went and I got a new look. How do I look? Do I look good? Why is that not allowed? That's a sex-based term, really? That's all right. Seinfeld. Yeah, no, did it look good though? When I got a little face change, shaved the goatee. You know, thought I'd try some new stuff. Anyone here a Mets fan? Yeah, apparently Super Cat, when you said Velcro, I had to allow it because it was a sex-based term. That's what it said. But that's because we've had clowns in our chat, so we've had to put a lot of stuff in there over time. That's true. It is my nickname. That's sex-based. I'm going to use that. Thank you for that, actually. On Gomez, I'm going to use that. It's going to be funny. Yeah, anyone here a Mets fan, I'm so sorry. And that's, as a Yankees fan, I'm so sorry. What happened to you these last 2 days? What David Stearns has done. I get it. They haven't won anything with that core, but same mistake over. It's the mistake with Seaver, mistake with Strawberry, mistake with Gooden, mistake with Pete Alonso. They won't pay who they develop, other than David Wright. Oh, okay. I heard he was. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that they didn't even table an offer to the management who's hit the most homers in your franchise's history. Yeah, you know, I'm one of the few who bought it. It's not worth the argument, to be honest with you. They overwhelmingly like 5 o'clock. I'll take that. Sure. Thanks. But no, I mean, it makes no sense to me. How you get outbid by Edwin Diaz. I get he didn't even let you counter, but the fact that you got outbid and then you don't very quickly turn and make sure, okay, well, we traded away one franchise guy who everyone loves. We've lost another to the team we are competing against. David Stearns last night at the baseball meeting said they're not competing against the Dodgers, and I'm just like, you're an idiot. You absolutely are competing against the Dodgers. And you lose, I mean, probably the most beloved player. Maybe that's Pete, but the Trumpets is beloved in that organization and that by that fan base. You lose him to the one team you can't. And then you don't even table an offer for Pete. They've been trying to get rid of him for 13 months. But I don't know. And apparently Goldschmidt is who they're looking at, which is just criminal. Like, David Stearns needs to realize he's not in Milwaukee anymore, and he actually has money to play with. It's almost like you saw last year, Cohen ran free agency for the Mets, and this year he said, all right, I'm dealing with the casino stuff, man. I mean, it might be way too much money, but you traded Nimmo for an older, more expensive player, and you lost Diaz. Pay it, because now you've lost the fan base. But Gio, you got 15 seconds. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You've lost the fan base now. You could save some of it with Alonso. They got a good young core, but tag out.
.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Well, they blew up a chicken man in Philly last night.
Final segment of Drive Time here. Giovanni Heater pinch hitting for Tim Leonard for the final couple of minutes on ESPN Syracuse and QSportsTalk.com. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on hopefully your safe commute home. Unbelievable weather early this morning today in Syracuse, and it feels as though my last winter here in Syracuse full-time is turning out to be the snowiest one in quite some time, right? I've been gone for 4 years at college, and it didn't snow this much even when I came back for Christmas break. We had a lot of green Christmases, and all of a sudden we're seeing a ton of snow. So if you love the snow, and you love this time of the year, and you love the Christmas vibes and everything like that, enjoy it. If you don't, if you hate the snow and despise having to shovel the driveway and brush off the car, I'm sorry, because it doesn't appear that it's going anywhere anytime soon. So anyways, we appreciate you. We hope that you're getting home safely. The roads seem to be much, much better this evening than they were this morning, but we're going to get plenty of snow throughout the rest of the week, it seems. Big week, though, coming up. Syracuse basketball finally back in action tomorrow. Isn't that the worst when you have that long layover, if you will? You got the 4 games in 8 days when they went out to Las Vegas and then came home and played against Tennessee. What a win against Tennessee. I guess there's no better way to head into a little bit of a hiatus without Cuse basketball, that long week and a half stretch without Orange Hoops,
than to win against the top 25 team with a court storming in the Dome. Doesn't get much better than that, right? So at least you can kind of cure your appetite with that win heading into tomorrow. But it's been a long week and a half without Cuse Hoops. I'm excited to see this team. I'm optimistic about what head coach Red Autry had to say about the possibility of when Donnie Freeman's going to return to the mix for this team. And plain and simple, I just think they're playing good basketball. They played well out in Vegas. I know they went 0-3, but they showed they can play with anybody. In their near-win overtime loss against third-ranked Houston, they obviously beat Tennessee. Unfortunately, Tennessee turned around and lost again, so it turned it from a quad 1 game into a quad 2 game. We'll see how that plays out through the rest of the year for sure. But nevertheless, excited for tomorrow. Excited because Syracuse basketball should, on both the men's and women's side, should win out the rest of the way in the non-con and roll into ACC play with some serious confidence. Tim was just talking about the big one for the women against Duke in the Dome to open up ACC play coming up before you know it, really. And then the men, of course, on New Year's Eve, they will play Clemson inside the Dome, a big one against the Tigers, a good team as well, who just lost at the buzzer last night. Kind of a heartbreaker for Clemson, just lost at the buzzer, and now all of a sudden the team is actually slipping my mind who beat them. It was a ranked team, top 25 team. If someone in the chat remembers exactly who beat Clemson at the buzzer, please remind me. But yeah. Oh, Govendo says I'm wearing an ugly sweater in the chat. That's right. If you're not watching on Q Sports Talk, in my defense, I would have never worn this. I didn't know I was coming on to pinch hit for Tim here at the tail end. But for those that can't see and are on the radio, I'm wearing a Texas A&M hoodie. That is the current attire right now, Texas A&M, and the chat giving me a hard time about it. I didn't know I was going to be on the air. Tomorrow I'll be decked out in the Script Cuse quarter zip with a button up underneath as well. So we'll be ready to go for some Cuse Hoops tomorrow. You people, you know where my loyalty lies. Come on now. You know where I grew up. You know where my roots are. You know who I'm rooting for, always. So we're looking forward to tomorrow night. St. Joe's. We got a full day for you tomorrow. A really full day for you tomorrow. We got Syracuse and St. Joe's in the Dome tomorrow night, but we'll have Orange Nation noon to 2 right here on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Syracuse with Paulie Sibilia and Stephen Fonte. As always, we will have drive time for you. Tomorrow evening, 5 to 6, Tim Leonard, he's got you covered. And then, of course, we're going to have pregame. I'll host pregame and postgame tomorrow night. Late tip inside the Dome against St. Joe's, 9 p.m. tip. Criminal, those 9 p.m. games. But nevertheless, we get Cuse basketball back. So we'll come at you live with 8 p.m. pregame right here on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Syracuse. I'll have you covered postgame. Hang out with us all day tomorrow. Let's make a day of it because we got coverage wall to wall all afternoon and all evening long. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate Paul producing the show behind the scenes, as always. Tim Becker, our engineer. For Tim Leonard out in the Dome, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long and good night. Get home safe. If you're not home safe yet, stay in, stay away from the snow, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow for a Syracuse basketball game day right here on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Syracuse.
Did you